Welcome back to Steve's World of Wonders. George's Island, named after George II of Great Britain, is the largest island entirely within the harbor limits of Halifax Harbour. The island is the location of Fort Charlotte, named after King George's wife Charlotte. Fort Charlotte was built during the Father Le Loutre's War, a year after Citadel Hill, which I showed earlier in my videos. The island is now a National Historic Site of Canada. What you were just looking at is the Sambro Lighthouse lens. From 1906 until 1967, this lens was used in the Sambro Island Lighthouse, located southwest of the entrance to Halifax Harbour. Sambro is the oldest lighthouse in Canada and the oldest surviving lighthouse in both North and South America. It was built in 1758 as the very first active business of Nova Scotia's first elected legislature, paid for by a special tax on liquor imports. In 1906, an extra 7 meters, 22 feet, was added to the tower, and this lens was installed, making the light visible for 17 nautical miles. Here's one of the lighthouse keepers cleaning the light's kerosene burner, circa 1950. Sambro's tower was built of stone and later shingled and painted with 3 red bands. This is the Maritime Museum's resident parrot, Merlin. Merlin has his own live webcam at novascotiawebcams.com. I guess parrots and pirates go with the nautical theme of the museum. It was Merlin's birthday when I was visiting. I guess he's kind of like the museum mascot. The Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, part of the Nova Scotia Museum. There's another lens for a lighthouse. And a neat little diorama of
Here's a model of Halifax Harbor. Here's the Clocktower we saw. And the citadel behind that.
This is a 120-year-old boat used for hunting geese. And now we're going to see a 130-year-old birch bark canoe used by Micmac Chief Malti Pictou to hunt porpoises for their oil. And here in the top corner of this display area is a giant octopus, a giant octopus. We are now entering a more somber exhibit in the museum about the Halifax Explosion, a disaster that occurred in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada on the morning of the 6th of December 1917. A French cargo ship laden with high explosives collided with a Norwegian vessel in the Narrows, a strait connecting the upper Halifax Harbor to Bedford Basin. A fire on board the French ship ignited her cargo, causing a massive explosion that devastated the Richmond district of Halifax. Approximately 2,000 people were killed by the blast, debris, fires, or collapsed buildings, and an estimated 9,000 others were injured. The blast was the largest man-made explosion at the time, releasing the equivalent energy of roughly 2.9 kilotons of TNT. A Melancholy Tale. In 1917, Richard Moxon worked on the Halifax waterfront as a teamster. That year, he ordered a tombstone for 3 of his children who had died in an epidemic 29 years earlier. For some reason, Moxon asked the Robertson Marine Hardware store if he could store it in their warehouse. On December 6th, fate intervened. Among the deaths were Richard Moxon and all the members of his immediate family. Their home on Room Street was in the direct path of the explosion. After the explosion, the Robertsons tried to determine where Moxon's children were buried, but only discovered that the graves were somewhere in Hants County. The tombstone remained unclaimed in their warehouse until 1973, when William Robertson and Son were closing out their business. When the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic moved into the old Robertson store and warehouse in 1982, the stone was given to the museum, where it remains as a memorial to a double tragedy. They're all gone. Barbara Orr had been running down the slope of Mulgrave Park to have a closer look at the burning ship. Suddenly the roar of the fire and the shouts were silenced. She stood still. Then a great wind seemed to sweep her off the ground. She rose and fell, soaring and swooping, twisting and turning as she went. Presently the wind stopped, and she found herself on solid earth again, but not in Mulgrave Park. She was over half a kilometer away, near the top of Fort Needham. Down where she had lived, she saw only a wall of smoke and flame. After a struggle, she reached the damaged home of her aunt, who at first did not recognize the blackened, limping figure. When questioned about her parents and 5 brothers and sisters, Barbara replied, "They are all gone." She was correct. Head for that burning ship. Captain Horatio Brannan was in command of the tug Stella Maris. After the collision between Emo and Mont Blanc, the collision that caused the Halifax Explosion, he gave orders to anchor the scows his ship had towed and approach the burning vessel. His fire hoses proved useless against such a fire. When the ship Mont Blanc exploded, Captain Brannan and his crew were trying to fix a tow to drag the ship away from Pier 6. Stella Maris was badly damaged. Captain Brannan and 18 of her 24 crew were killed. As you can see, there's lots of stories in this exhibit and lots of different artifacts all about the explosion, including this watch that stopped at the time of the explosion. It was found in the rubble in the aftermath. I highly recommend coming to this museum to explore these stories yourself and look around. It's a very interesting exhibit. These are pieces of metal ravaged by the explosion. These are from the ship itself, the Mont Blanc. This one they don't know if it's actually from the ship, but judging from the state of the metal, they think it is. The blast twisted and tore these solid fragments of metal. Just look at the giant plume of smoke in the photo. People thought it was the end of the world. These are called dead eyes, and they're part of a ship's rigging. These were found at a shipwreck site. All this stuff is from shipwrecks. This would be at the bow of the ship. They're usually called maidenheads, but I guess it's more appropriate to call them figureheads since they can be male or female carvings. Stay tuned for part 2 of my Maritime Museum videos. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.